In this video, we will dive into the movie The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. We will discuss the storyline, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the movie's production details and box office performance. Finally, we will provide reviews and share personal reaction. So, let's get started. The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug is a 2013 epic fantasy adventure film directed by Peter Jackson. It is the second installment of a three-part film adaptations based on 1937 novel The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It was preceded by Unexpected Journey and will continue with the Battle of the Five Armies 2014, and together they act as a prequel to Jackson's The Lord of the Rings film trilogy. The film is set in Middle-earth 60 years before the events of The Lord of the Rings, and portions of the film are adapted from the appendix to Tolkien's The Return of the King. The wizard Gandalf to Grey Land McKellen investigates a growing evil at Dol Guldur, while Bilbo Baggins continues his quest with 13 dwarves led by Thorin to reclaim the lonely mountain from the dragon Smaug. The film's screenplay was written by Peter Jackson. His long-term collaborators, friends Walsh and Philippa Boyens and Guillermo del Toro, who was originally chosen to direct before leaving the project in 2010. The ensemble cast also includes Evangeline Lilly, Lee Pace, Luke Evans, Orlando Bloom, James Nesbitt and Ken Stott, and features Stephens, Fry Sylvester, M.C. Coy, and Manu Bennett. The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug premiered on 2 December 2013 in Los Angeles and was released internationally on 11 December 2013. Like its predecessor, the film used a shooting and projection from R of 48 frames per second. Like its predecessor, its film used the shooting and projections frame of 48 frames per second, which was advertised as high frame rate to the public. The film was nominated for 3 Academy Awards: Best Visual Effects, Best Sound Editing, and Best Sound Mixing at the Inn of the Prancing Pony in Brie. Gandalf pursues Thrawn Oakenshield to obtain the Arkenstone to until the dwarves, and suggests that a stealthy Bulgur would be needed to steal the jewel back from Smaug. 1 year later, Thorin and his company are being pursued by Azog and his orc party down the Carrock following their escape by Eagle. After Bilbo informed the group that a massive black bear is also tracking them, Gandalf uses them among to the nearby home of Bjorn to seek his aid. Bjorn is a skilled soldier who sometimes takes the form of the bear. That night, Azog is summoned to Dol Guldur and instructs his son Bolg to take over the hunt of Thorin. With the aid of ponies provided by Bjorn, the company reached Mirkwood the next day, ahead of their orc pursuits. Here Gandalf discovers black speech imprinted on an old drawing, coinciding with a telepathic message from urging him to go to the high fields, and abruptly leaves without explanation after warning them to remain on the path await for his before entering the lonely mountain. However, they lost their way and are caught by a giant spider. Bilbo, with the help of the One Ring, sets about freeing the dwarves, which results in dropping the ring. Bilbo begins to learn of the corrupting influence the ring has on him after brutality, killing a spider to retrieve it. Just as the spiders are about to overwhelm the dwarves, a patrol of Wood-elves arrive, led by Legolas and Thranduil. The elves kill the remaining spider, but take the dwarves back to their underground balls. Bilbo evades capture by turning invisible with his magic ring. The Elven King offered to aid Thorin's quest, but wants a portion of Erbert's treasure, hoard in exchange. Thorin dismounts Thranduil, who angrily decides to keep the dwarves imprisoned until Thorin relents. For years of need be, as the mortal elves, by be patient. Bilbo, however, manages to arrange an escape using empty wine barrels that are sent downstream while being pursued by the elves. They are ambushed by Bol and his orc party and kill his wounded. Thranduil seals off his kingdom when he learns that an evil entity has returned and his amazing great power in the south. But Toriel disobeys him and leaves to assist the dwarves, followed by Legolas. Meanwhile, Gandalf meets Radagast to investigate the tombs of the Nazgul, which are found empty. Gandalf reveals that they answer to only one master. The company then meets a man named Bede who smuggles them into Isgard, the lake town where the descendants of Dell now reside. Thorin promised the master of Lake Town and its people a share of the mountain treasure for their assistance and receives a grand farewell. Kill is forced to stay behind, tended by Phil on the Beaufort. It is also revealed that Bard is a descendant of the last ruler of Dry and possesses the last backgrow arrow capable of defeating Smaug. Meanwhile, Gandalf returned to Dol Guldur is the south, while Radagast is sent to the worm after his discovery at the tombs. Gandalf finds the ruins infested with orc and is subsequently attacked by Azog, while the attempts to escape the reveals itself, and a duel between the two. The Namrocansers overpower Gandalf and reveals its true identity as a dog and Lord Theon. Meanwhile, Thorin and his remaining company reach the Lonely Mountain, while Bilbo discovers the hidden intents and is sent to retrieve the Orcrenstons, only to awaken Smaug in Lake John. Bart attempts to bring the Black Arrow to the town's launcher, but is arrested in the process, leaving its son to hide the arrow, kill Philly Owen before and Bart's daughter are then attacked by Bold and his orc party, who have infiltrated the town in search of their friend of the orc. Legolas leave in the pursuit of Bold, while Choriel says to turn to kill. The two then acknowledge the bond that was developed between one another. Meanwhile, are defeated and embarrassed Gandalf awakens and watches. Box office for the top 10 international films. This weekend was up versus last weekend, but according to industry data, it's 25% down on the same frame in 2012. On both occasions, there was a Hobbit movie at the theater, but the discrepancy does not come from how this year Warner Bros. Sequel, The Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug, is failing compared to an unexpected journey. The new film is performing 3% ahead overseas. Instead, there were two non-Hollywood movies that goosed overseas box office this time last year. Lost in the Thailand, J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth has a teeming population that can be very hard to keep track of hobbits, dwarves, elves, orcs, wizards, troll, goblins, man, woman, giant, eagle, giant spider, stone, giant, orcs, skin changer, and yes, dragon to name a few. With the release of The Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug coming December 13, we thought a good way of reacquainting you with some of the characters and introducing you to some new ones would be through visual identification. A quick recap of where we left off as you enter Middle-earth. The Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug is set some of 60 years before The Lord of the Rings director Peter Jackson split the narrative of The Hobbit into three films when we last left Bilbo begins Martin Freeman at the end of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. He, Gandalf, and their band of 13 dwarves, led by Thorin Oakenshield, were on their way to attempt to reclaim the Lonely Mountain from the titular dragon Smaug. President Benedict, they have just survived a battle with the lunatic orc or Chief Azog Tang to being rescued by the aforementioned giant eagle and are taken to the Karok. There in the distance, they can see the final destination. Fantasy in this scene is, I think, not a lower but a higher form of art, indeed the most nearly pure form, and so when achieved the most potent J.R.R. Tolkien, March 8, 1939 lecture fairy stories. Tolkien's Pernantical when achieved is the kicker of that statement, that acknowledgement of how difficult and rare successful fantasy realize it. You know it when you see it. This reviewer did not find difficulty in an unexpected journey. The first installment of Peter Jackson's gigantic trilogy, based on Tolkien's slim, one-volume classic The Hobbit, but is but it is there in spares in part 2. The Desolation of Smaug. This middle chapter is about a half hour too long, and the final third split the story up into three pieces, weakening the narrative trust that had been building. But no matter, by the time we get to Bilbo began, confrontation with the dragon Smaug was the delicious sneering evil by Benedict Cumberbatch. The real work has been done. The thematic elements are in place. The emotional tensions in highly strong, and action unfold in a wave like the fire erupting from the dragon's mouth overtaking all in its path. Except for a flashback which shows Gandalf, Lan and McKellen and the exiled dwarf king Thorin Oakenshield, Richard Armitage, join forcing in a dark and beer-soaked pub straight out of Joker's Canterbury Tales. The Desolation of Smaug picks up where the last one left off, with Bilbo, Martin Freeman, and the post of Rowdy dwarves had dipped into their journey to reclaim the lonely mountain and the dwarves' lost kingdom. Bilbo, dragged reluctantly from his comfy hole in the ground in the Shire in the first film, is now resigned to his fate and shows resourcefulness and pluck in one harrowing situation after another. He is also got that mysterious golden ring he finds in the goblin tunnel and one that seems to make him invisible. The one that nobody else know about, not yet. It will come in handy. Gandalf tries to keep the team together, but forgets off on his own solitary, spell-breaking mission, which Tolkien's book suggests is undertaken by Gandalf to force Bilbo to gain the trust of the dwarves on his own. Along the way, the heroes find shelter in the home of shape-shifting giant flesh bear and are pursued by a galloping army of orcs to save him. They cut through to Mirkwood forest and run into a terrifying head of a gigantic attacking spider in a scene doomed to give me nightmare for months. I have barely recovered from reading that scene in the book when I was 10-year-old, saved and then imprisoned by the isolationists-minded elf. The dwarves and Bilbo find a way to escape in a bunch of barrel down a river, being attacked from the bank by orc and elves alike. Some of friends show up, cool-eyed Legos, Orlando Bloom, and Galadriel, Cat Blanchett. There is a new elf in town, Toriel, Evangeline, Lily, who is drawn to one of the dwarfs. The romantic triangle she spark has nothing to do with anything. But it is still nice to see Toriel act as a dog's ex machine on a couple of occasions. Stephen Fry has a great cameo as the master of Lake Town, a despicable and God-ridden person lording it over his fearful constitution from on high. Is a Dickinson's piece of scenes chewing. Jackson and his team have a lot of fun creating these three-dimensional worlds, overwhelming us with different mood, energies, and personalities. Some of the images are breathtaking. The long take swept in with mysterious structures rising out of it, the misty dark of wood filled with shadowy waiting creature. The elegant vertical fortress of the elves shooting and yet rigid, to indicating the elves' unwillingness to get involved in the larger dark forces overtaking the outside world. The final conversation with the dragon, when it comes, it is worth the wait, although it would have been nice if the wait had not been quite so long. The dragon's lair is gorgeously imagined, an untilting and over-engaging landscape of coins and gold. There are lots of great moments, a gigantic tapestry, falling from the wall in a rippling wave, huge collapsing columns, teeny walkways over the abyss, the dwarves visible, avatar centers ingeniously and power. Throughout, you get the sense that you really are in a lost and glorious world. And yet, for all its scope, there is also a kind of homespun stillness. Is Tolkien's book. Art to is not everything, just a bit much. Energy, stereotypically British, which has sometimes been lost in other films, overwhelmed as they are by portent and meaning, is not lost this time. The barrel scene, for example, goes on forward feels like forever, and every second is justified. It has its own momentum, chaotic and jubilant, reaching an almost sacrable climax as events catapult out of control and nobody is sure which ends up. Least of all the dwarfs, Smaug is fearsome beast. You still laugh at the little Bilbo, wincing at the breath emerging from the dragon's mouth. Now that's the Bilbo I recognize from the book. There is a moment before the spider attack that perfectly aligns us with the overall intent of Tolkien's fiction. Bilbo is told to climb up one of tree to peek out of the top of the forest and see how much further they have to go. When he pushes his head to the top, all he can see is a carpet of autumn leaves spreading almost as far as the eye can see, with blue butterflies flitting about along the leaf-top tips. The sun shines brightly, and for a moment Bilbo is overstruck. We know that what happens next is bound to be grisly and terrible, but beauty is there to be appreciated by the hobbits with their love of homely nature, pretty color, and comfort. Now, this well as well we do. It was the love of home that kept people going in the dark year during which Tolkien wrote these volumes. When the shadow of war overhung Europe, the sunlight-drenched green fields of the Shire are long gone by the point in Bilbo's story. A distant memory, but the memory gives Bilbo his power is worth fighting for. Gravity had a lot of traction in Japan with bought to $3.6 million on Flight 44 seconds. 3D wraps over 78% of the total box office. The film opened in the number 2 spot behind local in hit Lupin 3 versus Detective Conan. Also in Japan, Universal's 47 Ronin brought in another for $85K at 331 dates for a 10-day total of $2.8 million. The Keanu Reeves scenario pick that has been a disappointment in the Tarot trial next opens in Malaysia and Singapore on December 19 and Indonesia on December 12. After 2023 tarot trials including Spain and UK will open there and there with North America on Christmas weekend. Catching Fire open in Japan on December 27. Smaug goes out in 2014 as does Disney store The Dark World. Gravity now has an estimated cum of $66.85 million, making it the film biggest overseas tarot trial for Lionsgate The Hunger Game. Catching Fire is the fourth biggest for box office outside of the US with an estimated $27.7 million through Sunday as Chinese films are being loaded into the end of the year. The latest I want to make a mark is Firestorm, directed by Alan Yeon. The hardcore Hong Kong actioner stars Infernal Affair, Andy Lau, and mainland actress Yoo Chan, who is reportedly the most followed actress on Weibo, China's version of Twitter, with $18 million Oculus, Firestorm and $5.2 million in opening in Thursday. By Saturday, it had taken spent $15 million according to Film Biz Asia and is understood to be at around $20 million now. The territory noticed offered $3.9 million at 29 dates for Universal's British Recom about time in the second weekend. The territory notched up further $3.9 million at 289 days for Universal's British rom-com. About time in second weekend, the film's box office was up 1% on strong word of mouth and now has a Korean cume of $9.6 million. It fell to third place behind the new Hobbit movie and local drama Way Back Home. Desolation of Smaug drew $7.3 million on 924 screens. Sunny news in Venezuela for Sunny's cloudy with a chance of metaverse. Two-way the films opened this weekend. The debut was timed to coincide with the beginning of school vacation and took an estimated $800K in just 3 days to outpace the entire queue of the first film. Smaug rode into France with $14.9 million on 909 screens to outpace An Unexpected Journey by 16%, contrary to the original estimate of 13% in other new releases. Universal bought all its lost in France, Switzerland, and Republic this weekend. It's handling the movie in a total of 35 territories, with Slovenia next on December 19 and the UK and Ireland on December 26. The film went out to limited in France on just 149 screens and grossed $323K. French and German Switzerland picked up 960K at 224 dates. Next up in France, Fox's Walking with Dinosaurs start its international rollout there on December 18, followed by several others European territories, including Germany and UK on December 19. It opens stateside on December 20, Germany. Warner Bros. Updated his Sunday Smaug estimate to reflect a 20% increase over an unexpected journey with $19 million on 1400 screens, which was also below the original screen count. The figures are on par with an unexpected journey did in its first weekend last year. It was the number one film, followed by Frozen and Catching Fire. Next week, Ron Burgundy brings his Solon quality hair to Britain in Paramount Acroman 2, and that's kind of a big deal. Frozen had a super start in Russia, one of the international boom market. The Disney film bought at number one, with an estimated $11.1 million to make it the biggest opening weekend ever for any of the studio's animated film. It was 21st higher than Monsters University and up 82% over it Ralph. It's now 7th Disney animated release of all time. Sony's Captain Phillips in the second outing grossed an estimated $10K for a $3.1 million queue there. Captain Phillips also passed the $100 million mark internationally this weekend. Smaug arrives in Russia on December 18, cloudy with a chance of metaverse, 2 held on its opening last week with an estimated $1.5 million extra and a 0% drop in its total in the country is now $4 million. American Hustle also bought in its first international territory with an OC debut that intended it at number one with an estimated $2.8 million, 25 screens. According to a local trade report, Australia sure seems to appreciate David O. Russell's movie Silver Linings playback in the top 20 at the box office there this year, and that's after the Australian Academy of Cinema and Television Artists gave it 5 of its international awards in early 2013. Just last week, the Academy nominated American Hustle for all 7 of its international prizes. The Desolation of Smaug opens in Australia on December 26 up against Frozen. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, where Peter Jackson is making the Hobbit trilogy, Smaug had fought a opening gross $1.85 million from 201 screen, 10% higher than an unexpected journey's record breaking showing last year. International numbers are pouring in from Warner Bros. 40 Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, which is expected to take in, according to the studio, $73.6 million this weekend domestically. Overseas, the gross is estimated at $131.2 million in 49 markets. That's on par with the 2012 debut of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, but the comparison is not apples to apple, as some territories, like the UK, opened last year with a 4-day weekend, and this were on a regular Friday Sunday schedule. For this purpose, its Mark Warner is reporting the full check from the film's rollout through Sunday. Other highlights this weekend include Sony's Captain Phillips crossing the $100 million mark internationally with an estimated cume of $1019 million. Meanwhile, Universal 47 Ronin, which opened to disappointing result in Japan last weekend, moved into its second frame, essentially helping its first weekend take off $105 million with an estimated 508K at 331 dates. Its 10-day total in the market is now $2.9 million, depressing 3D samurai film starring Keanu Reeves and a Japanese cast is understood to have had a proper production budget. After 6 incentive of $175 million, insider have told me that the Japan result is not a catastrophic hit for the studio's financial year, with accounting adjustment having been anticipated. Hobbit: The Desolation of Smaug is now launched in 32 international markets with number 1 slots across the board. Warner Bros. Says the sequel took $15.23 million on Thursday, outpacing The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey by 11% for a progressive 2-day cume at $24 is open in a handful of territories on Wednesday, but some Smaug is playing different across overseas, some on par and some low. Germany delivered the biggest opening of the year with $3.4 million on 146 screens. Warner says this was 67 ahead of the previous film. Mexico was under highlight with $909K million on 2 screens and 58% of the market. Because movies usually open on a Friday in a territory that are relevant, comps for Thursday 11% lower than the first movie. It took $570K on 251 screen. Estimate for the second day are gaining ground. I understand the first Hobbit, which held its worldwide premiere in Wellington last year, it was in LA this time, ultimately grossed about $9.2 million in New Zealand to end 2012 as the country's top film. Related box office, The Hobbit: Desolation of Smaug across $8.8 million in mid-night shows faces different marketplace this year. First update Thursday 11:37 a.m. scored $8.5 million on its opening day, December 11th. An unexpected journey. Warner Bros. Says finance was unconfirmed at $2.8 million with 263,000 admissions, a jump of 8% on the earlier film with 53% of the market. The second installment of Peter Jackson Hobbit trilogy released in the US tomorrow, with midnight shows starting tonight. MovieTickets.com reports that 88% of its sales yesterday were for the film, which is tracking at about 85 million in the domestic blow. Meanwhile, other international territories have had a look-see at the Benedict Cumberbatch voiced Dragon Smaug ahead of the US, including Holland, Belgium, and French-speaking Switzerland each had its biggest opening of the year. Holland's gross was $690,000 on 172 screen. Belgium's was $42,000 for 64% of the market, a 90% increase on an unexpected journey, and the latter claimed $185,000 on 86 screen for an 80% share, also commanding an 80% shared with the Philippines with 252,000 on 312 screen. That was on par with the previous film. In Scandinavia, where MGM is releasing the film, Smug book look a total of $4.2 million. Sweden was 3% ahead of an unexpected journey, and Finland was up 9% to 48,000 on 191 screen. Hobbit the Dissolution of Smug opened Wednesday in its first international tarot trial. France to an estimated $2.8 million or 8% higher than The Hobbit and Unexpected Journey on 909 screen. Warner Bros. Said the epic opened in the number one spot. Frozen, of course, is in the second week order. In Paris, it was 15% ahead of last year's Hobbit. Other films opening in France this week include local comedy 100%, Kashmir, Cannes Prize winner, A Touch of Sign, Jesse Cander's Are Lost and Bad Grandpa. Warner Bros. Is opening Desolation of Smug in 49 tarot tries Friday on more than 15,000 screens including in Germany, Italy, Spain, the UK, Mexico, Brazil and Korea. It will roll out in the other market later. Industry analysts say tracking for the domestic blow is expected to be similar to last year's opening of $84.6 million, which ultimately took in $303 million domestically. Desolation of Smug also is expected to churn out the same overall cum internationally, $714.5 million, but only time will tell. The worldwide distribution strategy for this year's Hobbit is slightly different than last year as the studio has decided not to open in Japan until late February. Mirroring this strategy, it took with it the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The studio also pushed some Latin American markets closer to the Christmas holiday. Last year, An Unexpected Journey opened in 56 tarot trials day and did with the domestic blow. Warner Bros. Said the resolution of Smug will be opening its 7 favor tarot trials, which may persecute year-on-year comparisons with published figures for last year's Hobbit film. Half of the screen will be showing the peak in 3D. Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug debuted at the top of the box office charts this weekend, taking $73.7 million for its domestic debut. Internationally, the film ranked number of the cross 49 in foreign markets, earning $121.2 million for a worldwide total of $205 million. Produced by New Line Cinema, MGM, and Warner Bros., The Desolations of Smog had the fourth biggest December opening ever, behind An Unexpected Journey, $84.6 million, I Am Legend, $77.2 million, and Avatar, $77 million, based on J.R.R. Tolkien's 1937 fantasy novel. The adventure film follows Hobbit Bilbo Baggins Martin Freeman as he travels with a group of dwarves to face off against the dragon Smaug, voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, Evangeline Lilly, Orlando Bloom, Lee Pace, and Luke Evans co-star. Coming in second place is Disney's animated feature Frozen, which brought $22.3 million on its third weekend at the box office for a domestic total of $164.4 million. Overseas, Frozen added $31.5 million for a worldwide total $266 million. The Hunger Games Catching Fire, now in its fourth week, grossed $13.15 million for the number 4 spot and a North American total $357 million internationally. The hit sequel grossed $19.5 million, bringing the overseas total to $372 million. The film's worldwide total is now $739.9 million, surpassing the lifetime worldwide box office for the first film, The Hunger Games, $691 million. Marvel's Thor, The Dark World came in fifth place over its 6 week at the North American box office, starring Chris Hemsworth. The action feature made $2.7 million for a domestic total of $198.1 million worldwide. The film has made $619.9 million to date. Disney's Saving Mr. Blanks also opened in limited release this weekend, bringing in $421 million from 16 venues. The biopic expands into wide release next week. Fantasy in this sense is, I think, not a lower but a higher form of art. Indeed, the most nearly pure form, and so, when achieved, are most potent. J.R.R. Tolkien's March 8, 1939 lecture fairy stories. Tolkien's parenthetical, when achieved, is the kicker of that statement, the acknowledgement of how difficult and rare successful fantasy really is. You know it when you see it. This reviewer did not find that quality in an unexpected journey. The first installment of Peter Jackson's gigantic trilogy, based on Tolkien's film, one-volume classic, The Hobbit, but is there in spares in part 2. The Desolation of Smaug. This middle chapter is about a half hour too long, and the final chart split the story up into three pieces, weakening the narrative trust that had been building. But no matter, by the time we get to Bilbo Baggins' confrontations with the dragon Smaug, voiced by delicious sneering evil by Benedict Cumberbatch, the real work has been done. The thematic elements are in place. The emotional tensions is highly strung. The action unfolds in a wave like the fire erupting from the dragon's mouth, overtaking all in its path. Except for a flashback which shows Gandalf, Lan and McKellen and the exiled dwarf king Thorin Oakenshield, joining forces in a dark and beer-soaked pub straight out of Creature's Canterbury Tales. The Desolations of Smaug picks up where the last one of left, with Bilbo and a pause of Roti, the dwarves deep into their journey to reclaim the lonely mountain and the dwarves' lost kingdom. Bilbo, dragged reluctantly from this comfy hole in the ground in the Shire in the first film, is now resigned to his fate and shows resourcefulness and pick Palak in one harrowing situation after another. He is also get a mysterious golden ring found in the goblin tunnel, the one that seemed to make him invisible, the one that nobody else knows about. Not yet, it will come in handy. Gandalf tries to keep the team together, but progress off in his own solitary, spell-breaking mission, which Tolkien's book suggests is undertaken by Gandalf to force Bilbo to gain the trust of the dwarves on his own. Along the way, the heroes find shelter in the home of shape-shifting giant slash bear and are produced by a galloping army of orcs. To save them, they cut through the mixed Mirkwood forest and run into a terrifying herd of gigantic attacking spiders. In a scene doomed to give me nightmare for months, I have barely recovered from reading the scene in the book when I was 10-year-old. Saved and then imprisoned by the isolated elves, the dwarves and Bilbo find a way to escape in a bunch of barrels down a river, being attacked from the banks by orcs and elves alike. Some old friends show up, cool-eyed Legos and Galadriels. There is a new elf in town, Torian, who is drawn to one of the dwarves. The romantic triangle she spark has nothing to do with anything, but it is still nice to see Toriel act as a Deus ex machina on a couple of occasions. Stephen Fry has a great cameo as the master of Lake Town, a despicable and gout-ridden prison, lording it over his fearful constituents from on high, its dictation piece of sense chewing. Jackson and his team have a lot of fun creating these three-dimensional worlds, overwhelming with different moods, energies, and personalities. Some of the images are breathtaking. The long lake swathed in mist with mysterious structures rising out of it. The misty dark wood filled with shadowy waiting creature. The elegant vertical fortress of the elves shooting and yet rigid, to indicating the elves' unwillingness to get involved in the larger dark forces overtaking the outside world. The final confrontation with the dragon, when it comes, is worthy weird, although it would have been nice if the weird had not been quite so long. The dragon here is gorgeously imagined and undulating and ever-changing landscape of queens and gold. There are lots of great moments, gigantic tapestry falling from the wall in rippling wave, huge collapsing columns, teeny walkways over the abyss, the dwarfs visible at their centers, ingenuity and power. Throughout, you got the sense that you really are in lost and glorious award. There is a moment before this padded attack that perfectly aligns us with the overall intent of Tolkien's fiction. Bilbo is told to climb on a tree to peek out of the top of the forest and see how much further they have to go. When he pushes his head through the top, all he can see are carpet of autumn, leaves spreading almost as far as the eye can see, with blue butterflies flitting about along the leaf tips. The sun shines brightly, and for a moment Bilbo is awestruck. We know that what happens next is bound to be crispy and terrible, but beauty is there to be appreciated, and the hobbits, with their love of homey nature, pretty colors and comfort, know this as well as we do. It was the love of home that kept people going in the dark year during which Tolkien wrote his volumes. When the shadow of war overhung Europe, the sunlight-drenched green fields of the Shire are long gone by that find in Bilbo's story a distant memory, but the memory gives Bilbo his power is worth fighting for. Just last month on this website, when talking about the Hunger Games catching fire, the values and success of great movie trilogies came up in a conversation. In that review, I referenced the long mirroring dimension I formulated about movie trilogies when I reviewed The Dark Knight Rises in 2012. To summarize any finding from both of those reviews, I believe the best trilogies are revered and remembered for either an amazing a middle chapter that builds from a strong origin or a dynamite final chapter that saves the best for last and releases all of the energetic build-up the filmmakers were saving the whole time. For great like The Godfather, Star Wars and the Dark Knight series, the middle film was their best, while Toy Story, the Jason's Bourne films, and The Lord of the Rings series waited until the final film to dazzle the most. In giving the Hunger Games, catching free of middle of the road, I aligned myself as patiently waiting for the conclusion of his intended trilogy before passing final judgment while still holding onto the bunch they did try were saving their best for the end. With the several arrival of the Hobbit, the Desolation of Smaug, the thrilling middle chapter of Peter Jackson's newest trilogy. The blueprint for this trilogy's success seems to be aligned with Jackson's first trip to Middle-earth over a decade ago. Like the Lord of the Rings series, I think the best is getting said for last a year ago when I reviewed A Hobbit and Unexpected Journey. I talked extensively about having the virtue of patience to see a whole story through. I staunchly defended the right pattern Jackson and company had to maliciously and mythology build their story and their world on their own terms and to their desired detail. After already banking on one great movie trilogy, I felt Jackson had earned that luxury. A year later, with the second and middle chapter hitting theaters, my opinion is not changed. I gave The Hobbit an unexpected journey a 5-star review and a place on my ear and 10 best list of 2012, and I echo those accolades of The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, like a great middle chapter should. This film escalated the tension, danger, and risk toward an as yet unseen climax that is sure to blow our socks off. Are the producer still milking us for 3 movies that could have to fit into one? Probably, but once again, I for one have the patience to respect that these filmmakers are up to value others might call tedious, to bringing you up to speed from this first chapter the wizard Gandalf to Grey Lan McKellen has enlisted the sensible halfling of Hobbit Bilbo Baggins, Martin Freeman, to play a small but crucial burglar role in the quest of company of displaced dwarves, led by Thorin Oakenshield, Richard Armitage, heir to the throne. The 13 of them seek to reclaim his blighted and their lost homeland, the lonely mountain of Erebor, which was invaded by a giant, gold-lusting dragon named Smaug a generation ago. Their quest has put them in the crosshair of an orc login being controlled by a mysterious necromancer figure that can raise the dead, but not before Fat led Bilbo to an encounter with Gollum and his Sirix, where he acquired two certain previous piece of jewelry that will change his life. In this film, he the journey to Erebor supplies the party. Gandalf leaves the group to confront the dark necromancer threat to the south in the abandoned ruins of Dol Guldur. The rest of the gem dodge the orc hunters by going through the decaying Mirkwood forest region controlled by the Wood-elves. After tangling with deadly splitter, the company is taken captive by Legolas, the familiar face of Orlando Bloom, and his Orca captain traveler, Evangeline Lily out he was lost, and brought before the Eleven King. Thranduil learned Thorin's Brave their assistance, and Bilbo, using this ring-powered stealth, enables the drinking river scab out of Mirkwood. After clearing the forest, the dwarves acquire the benevolent help of Beard, the bowman, fast and furious, 60s Luke Evans, an influential would-be leader of Egroth, the lake town at the foot of the lonely mountain, with the orcs and now the elves on the trail. The dwarves and Bilbo reload and regroup in Lake Town before making their final ascension to slopes and secret passing inside Erebor. The prevailing mystery is just how formidable is that far-breathing threat that awaits them there. To continued characters development is ended to a pack of the visions of the Hobbit. The Desolation of Smaug, a few of our sporting dwarves are starting to get a little more way to live to join the leads of Bilbo, Thorin and Gandalf. The new additions of Legolas, Thorin and Bard fit right in, and special effects have always played an important role in Peter Jackson's adaptations of J.R.R. Tolkien's books, but with the Desolation of Smaug, the middle chapter of the Hobbit movie trilogy, they take center stage. This is not necessarily a positive development because it comes at the expense of things many films cures value, like characters development and narrative thrust. Filmed and exhibited primarily in 3D, with lengthy computers created action sequences. The Desolation of Smaug often looks and feels more like a video game than a motion picture. There are things to like about the second Hobbit film. The director's vision of Middle-earth is as beguiling as ever, but the blotting that was a problem with an unexpected journey is an even bigger issue here. The Desolation of Smaug is too long and too visually busy to be loved by any but a die-hard fan. Puristic those who try Tolkien's written word by biblical references may be horrified. A lot of the running around that consume the running time bears no resemblance to anything in the book. Although Jackson don't change the core story, he treats it like an outline. Less than 50% of what's on screen during the course of this Desolation of Smaug comes from The Hobbit. The rest is pulled from Tolkien's notes and Jackson's imagination. The film picks up where its predecessor left off, with Hobbit Bilbo Baggins Martin, Wizard Gandalf, Lan McKellen, and 13 dwarves led by Thorin Oakenshield, continuing their great adventure after the confrontation with Azog the Feller that ended an unexpected journey. The group left encounters a ship, shifting giant of a man named Bjorn, They spend the night in his house before entering a Mirkwood forest where giant spider and unhelpful elves await. After negotiations between Thorin and the elf king, Thranduil leap years prove ineffective. Bilbo helps the dwarves escape their captivity. With Orc in pursuit, they continue their journey to Lonely Mountain, where Smaug the dragon, voice of Benedict Cumberbatch, await. Meanwhile, Gandalf, having separated from the main party, pays a visit to Dol Guldur, the castle of the necromancer, and learns that Sauron has returned to Middle-earth and is preparing for war. One evident improvement over an unexpected journey relates to pacing. This movie does not bog down the way the previous one did. It shifts from one action sequence to the next, sometimes without taking time to breathe. Unfortunately, Jackson's over-reliance on computer-generated imagery during many of these high-octane sequences diminishes the experience. Action work best when there is an identification with the characters and a real sense of danger. Those elements are absent here. Many of the Desolation of Smog high-profile sequences feels either like elaborate video game cutscene or templates for an amusement ride. An example is the barrel escape, which feels like a hyper-real animated sequence by spending so much time extending action sequence, there is only ball of the lonely mountain that lasts for 30 minutes. Jackson is forced to end the film on a cliffhanger. It's an awkward stopping point that may anger some viewer. Admittedly, the dragon looks great, quite an achievement, especially when seen its full glory on the big screen. Benedict Cumberbatch provides smart voices, giving him an opportunity to interact with Sherlock co-star Martin Freeman with appropriate gravities. Still, what was a high point becomes distant for no purpose other than to highlight the technical proficiency of the special effect wizard. The movie's look is odd. Color is so desaturated during the second half that here is charm when the desolation of smog appear. Monochromatic and Howard shots normally praiseworthy score is disappointingly flat. Fans of The Lord of the Rings will become the return of Legolas, although he is not mentioned by name in Tolkien's book. This is an example of effective artistic license. The same can be said of the inclusion of Toriel, a creation of screenwriter Fran Walsh, Philippa Bowens, and Peter Jackson. Toriel at least gives the Desolation of Smog female presence and her characters arc. Limited it may be, is intriguing. The best new addition to the Desolation of Smog is Bard to Lake Down hero Luke Evans, whose story has been expanded beyond the one provided by Tolkien. As spectacle go, the Desolation of Smog River, at least in its ability to provide eye candy, it fails to excel on a deeper level, however, lacking the emotional impact delivered by the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Tower, and the Return of the King. It's epic fantasy for those who thinks the turn means monsters, chases, fight, and like little else. One can argue that it's unfair to judge the middle chapter of trilogy until all three volumes are available, but Jackson has not done an especially good job for making the Desolation of Smog work as a stand-alone project. Like the Dragon's Treasure, Hoard is pretty and vast but lacking in substance. You really have to appreciate what Peter Jackson has done with this series and before that, The Lord of the Rings trilogy, bringing these stories to life without compromising on the length or scale of the course material is really quite admirable and was as it with the first movie. I really regret not seeing this in theater because there are so many grand moments in this movie that we are crying out for the size and magnificence on the big screen. Okay, basic plot. We can again join our company of intrepid heroes as they journey onto the lonely mountain to face Smaug and reclaim the kingdom he stole from the dwarves. This journey, which has already been dangerous enough, now comes with these new threats such as giant spider, wood-elves, and a corrupt and cunning people of a nearby village called Lake Town. All of this will pale in comparison to the danger that lies within the mountain, the horrible fire-breathing dragon Smaug. I definitely enjoy this movie more than first one. There is more action and a greater sense of payoff or things we were promised in the first movie. For one, we finally get to see Smaug and he is terrifying. Benedict Cumberbatch was perfectly cast and the quiet of his voice acting is superb. The terror and immense menace is he brings forth when nothing but his voice is entrancing. He also has this trace of charm in his character, so you not only fear him, but you also like him. I think the best of villains always have this element, a charm to their character. You fear them, you want them to lose, but you also secretly want them to win as you can. You see more of them. Dark put in the look and feel. Smog is also sensational. He looks incredibly real, and the way he moves and interacts with his environment shows the care and attention to detail put into his creation by the filmmaker. Now look, this is a Peter Jackson's movie about Middle Earth, so yes, it's going to be long. This movie is just under 3 hours, but I feel things moved about more swiftly in this movie than they did in the first. There are very few scenes that seemed dragged out or pointless. Things are constantly moving, quite literally in many parts, as there is more action, fighting, and running from the threats that the hero's journey brings. The majority of these action sequences are visually very well shot and constructed, and there are some great set pieces on display. My favorite of these was right near the end. When Bilbo and dwarves fight Smaug, there is some great camera work and heart-erasing moment aplenty. There are also more than a few new characters added to the story. We meet the Wood-elves, in particular Legals, and Toriel. Toriel is probably my favorite character from this movie, and I enjoy Lily's portrayal of her. She is not as one note as the other character and is quite complicated, which I liked. Apparently, her love story with one of the dwarves kill stays away from the source material, but I rather liked it than think there's something to the overall story. It helped us connect with the tutorial and gave us something to differentiate Kelly from the rest. I honestly sometimes can't tell the dwarves apart, and there are often really is no need to. I kind of see them as a faceless mob with the exception of Thorin, and they are not developed well enough as character for there to really to be a need for distinction. Speaking of which, a lot of characters in this movie are not well developed. All times there are just as much happening in the movie that there is not enough time to properly flesh out the character. But one character that is quite well developed is Bilbo Baggins. Martin Freeman once again does a great job bringing him to life. I am also enjoying the transformation occurring in the Bilbo's character. As he faces and survives more challenges, he becomes bolder and more daring, but more than that, the effect of the ring on him is clearly visible. There are moments you can see how much as the ring has already corrupted him and how far he is willing to go to protect it. I also like how involved in the plot Bilbo he is literally this movie main hero and an invaluable part of Thorin's Oakenshield company. There are still moments in this movie. However, then everything just feels like a setup for a later movie rather than a self-contained adventure. Gandalf leaves the group pretty early on to pursue some side quest, which is just a setup for the Lord of the Rings. Yes, maybe. That's how it happened in the book, but it just not it feel like an organic part of the story or even truly necessary. Luckily, this side mission though does not form the large chunk of the movie, with the majority of the story focused on Bilbo, Thorin, and the other dwarfs. Oh, before I forget, another problem I had with this movie was that sometimes its action feels a little periods of the Caribbean. The action at time feels a bit whimsical and completely devoid of sexual danger. If a character falls 30 feet, he will get caught on a branch that will springboard him up and he will land on his feet without any consequence. It just feels too cartoonish and sucked the tension out of the fight scene at times. Another problem was the hyper choreographed fight scene involving Toriel and Ligol. I get the elves are these mystical creatures that cannot be missed, but the choreography in the fight scene felt too rigid and lacking the insexual moment of an actual fight. Fight scenes are akin to dance in that every character movie in predetermined ways, but in the fight scene in these movies, the actor movie before time and the fight scene look staged instead of authentic. Overall, this movie is an improvement on the first. The story feels like it's coming to a head, and although there are still moments where the movie sets up upcoming event, it feels more safe content. It's recommend seeing it 7 better. I can't remember a more recent film trilogy that was met with such a mixture of excitement and security from hardcore fans as much as Peter Jackson's New West adaptations of The Hobbit. Last year's An Unexpected Journey was divided alongside not only critics and fans but the most admirable of ringers who follow J.R.R. Tolkien's text as religion. After viewing The Desolation of the Smog is last night, I noticed that this trend will not only continue but build toward another stunning entirely in the series that will once again cause outrage among the most dedicated of Lord of the Rings fans. What people disparately need to realize is that Destination of Smog is not the second part in the film trilogy based on J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. Is the second part in a series based off a what novel as well as the appendix The Lord of the Rings and entirely new material. The Hobbit for as wonderfully earnest and gorgeous as it is. A little more than a whimsical children tale that opens with the imagination and plays against the light-hearted wonderment of visiting a new world. It's a stark contrast to the dark thematic element of Tolkien's more famous follow-up, The Lord of the Rings, and those changes are drastically evident while reading both novels back to back. Since Peter Jackson's brought the film version to life in the opposite order in which Tolkien's brought the next hay is now in predicament in which a faithful adaptation is no longer an option. I honestly believe that you can't have an entirely trilogy based around a light-hearted trek through the forest without mentioning the growing evil of the Lord of the Rings, the violent hold that the One Ring take on barriers and the events of a trilogy that goes on to become the largest event in the history of Middle Earth. Throughout this review, I am sure been wondering where is the mentioning of Smaug? You know, the dragon in the Goodman title. Well, truth be told, I have been holding off on this because I really, truly believe that the entire final confrontation with Smaug should be seen with the blindness up to the event with a completely clean slate. You have seen his King Kong. Now prepare for Peter Jackson's Donkey King. About an hour into the entertaining middle slab of the Hobbit trilogy, having already tangled with missing organs, a fearsome bear man, and sundry other perils or paws of undersized heroes clamber into wooden casks and are lobbed into words and not so much an action sequences as an unrelenting pile-up of lunatic barrel-based bagax as a rocket down river, pursued by elves and orcs, who are simultaneously waging winger war in the branches above. Orc sliders fly at the camera, plankton, fizzling waterfalls, and bounds of rock to scatter servants of evil like skaters. as rousing and inventive as King's Triple. TRX face of this multi-million-dollar film ride is, with apologize barrel often, and think that is the stage in the last room. The dwarves were still loading the dishwasher, while an unexpected journey and plenty of bucolic charm it for a middle art film. Feel OG insequential, the desolation of smug remedies that moody, urgent, and for want of a better word, rings here. It's a much more satisfying film. If anything, it depends with early event with something approaching impatience beyond Michael Pear's band, the aforementioned bear. Man is led behind before we have really had a chance to savor his peculiar brand of beastly intensity. No doubt he will be back to claw up baddies in the Battle of Five Armies, and the same goes for Mirkwood's Halkationary, which have the company tripping buzz in variety of amusing ways. One problem with the former film was that it is retrod go too closely. The footsteps the fellowship. It was difficult to share Bilbo's ave at entering Ravendale, given that we would already been there 11 years before. Here you can feel Jackson's relief at having entirely new world in which to play. The forest domain, the silver elves has beauty edged with romance, plus it gives Lily that as the dagger eyed Thranduil, an amazing elk on throne. But a real standout are like Dawn and Erebor, contrasting but equally stunning showcase of production design. The former of fog shrouded decantions bark that we are informed stink of fish oil and tar is a new pleasingly earthy flavor for Middle Earth, like Adors in the Two Tower. It was largely built for real and bristles with detail. Kingdom under the mountain Erebor, on the other hand, is a kind of mad location that could only exist on a Veta mega computer. Its counterpiece, a stash of wealth so vast it would give score MC Duck a quaking fit. As Bilbo still spot on Martin Freeman and go near their destination, the film gets increasingly busy, splitting the group into an intercutting between those veterans and Gandalf Lan McKellen, who is off poking around the ruins of Dol Guldur. That story tells his seasonal quiet caught fire. It basically amounts to the wizard yelling at a giant evil link upload, and it could be argued the more screen time might have been usefully given to the dwarves, who remain largely anonymous beside Thorin. Richard Armitage, whose figure of nobility is beginning to crumble, revealing Western motives beneath. The only one who gets much attention is Kelly. The Two Tower is my favorite film of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. While most people either prefer the pitch perfect styling of the first film or the epic conclusion of the third, for me, I thought the middle chapter stood out in interesting way. I feel like a lot of the film's success and itself to how writer director Peter Jackson was able to take a book in which little happened and craft it into a satisfying story arc which fit perfectly into the trilogy, but also stood alone as a unique accomplishment. He took a handful of major events in the story and fleshed them out, allowing him to focus much more on character and drama, and less on sticking to the detail of the next. And it really showed off his and his team writing skill. I had high hopes that The Hobbit, The Desolations of Smaug, the second film of Jackson's Hobbit trilogy, would follow in the footsteps of The Two Towers. And while it's definitely an excellent film, it lacks the creativity and emotions of his previous middle movie. The Desolation of Smaug picks up right where an unexpected journey let off. Bilbo, Gandalf, Thorin, and all other dwarves are still on the run, pursued by Azog and his band of orc while making their way toward toward the lonely mountain. the abandoned dwarf kingdom and current home of Smaug, a fearsome dragon. Along the way, they have a variety of encounters, most of which will be intimately familiar from anyone who read the book as much as I did when I was a kid. They stop at the house of this slab shifter, Bjorn, battle gained spider, in the forest of Mirkwood, are captured by Wood-elves, and pass through the depressing Lake John before they can finally arrive at the lonely mountain. The dwarves and Bilbo have to undertake most of this journey alone, as Gandalf leaves them to investigate the necromancer, a sorcerer, remote to be building an army in the fortress of Dol Guldur. Our heroes from the first film actually take a bit of backseat to some of the new character this time around. Returning cast is still solid, particularly Martin Freeman as Bilbo, Lan McKellen as Gandalf, and Richard Armitage as Thorin. They are joined this time around by Michael as Baron, who also was seen in the film and made basically no impression on me. Despite being a bigger character from the book, Luke Evans fares much better as Bartu Bowman, a citizen of the lake town who smuggled the dwarves into town and has an important role to play in the final film. Evans gives Bart a soulful, sorrowful quality that tells us much more about the state of Lake John. Stephen Fry, who lazes in his lavish room while his citizen barely manage to scrape by. And then there are the elves. We briefly met Lee Pass's Thranduil in the first film, the Eleven King who refused to help the dwarves when they were first attacked by Smaug and who now imprisons Thorin and company in an attempt to keep them from the quest. Thranduil is not the only elf in the film, however, as he is joined by a pair of younger elves who help give the Desolation of Smaug its narrative force. Thranduil's son Legos his role from the Orlando Bloom, reprising his role from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and even Glenn Lilly as Turiel, a new character created for the film. The inclusion of these two characters marks both the film's biggest deviation from the book and the film's most creative bit of storytelling. It's fantastic to see Bloom back as Legolas years before his partnership with Gimli, whose sole concern is the protection of his home regardless of who might suffer because of his inaction. Turiel, who was added by Peter Jackson to give the film a much-needed female presence, disgraced with her friend Legolas, both on principle and specifically because he might have fallen in love with Gilly, known only online as the sexy dwarf, who has definitely fallen for her. In addition to Legolas simply being familiar face, he and Turiel give some much-needed depth to the otherwise faceless elves of Tolkien's book. Whether in the Legolas-Turiel love triangle, or in the class dynamic between Turiel and Thranduil, or in the debates between the two over isolation versus integration, the movie is considerably more interesting and entertaining with them in it. It also helps that having two elves as major character seriously ups the quality of the action sequences. Particularly fantastic is the dwarf's barrel escape from Mirkwood, which has been transformed from a fun passage in the book into a major action set pieces, with both the elves and the orc pursuing the dwarves as the barrels race down the river, planning off a waterfalls or tumbling into the air. It's visually stunning, both exciting and funny, and gives us moment of character's growth as well. The elves provide a visual counterpoint to the dwarves and make the rhythm of the action more interesting merely by their presence, whether in his section of the film or in another latter. It's by far the best action sequences of the Hobbit trilogy thus far. The spider sequence is actually felt a little flat by comparison, taking a big moment of bravery for Bilbo from the book and diminishing it slightly for the film. As for the action at the end of the film, which I won't spoil, it felt largely unnecessary as it was simply created in order to give the film some action to end on because of the choice of stopping point. Unfortunately, unlike to Trower, the Desolation of Smaug feels much more like a middle chapter than it should. Most everything that happens either feels like a continuation of a point from the first one or a setup of something in the last. While individual events along the dwarf's journey work well in the book, in the film they largely come off as failure. It's interesting that the overriding opinion I have heard from people about the film is that it's very long. Despite being 8 minutes shorter than a predecessor, a film's length is an entirely subjective feeling because a short film can feel long if it lacks content, or while a long film can fly by it keeps the viewer engaged. Many of the events of the film are just stepping stones on the way to the trilogy conclusion, meant to be passed over along the journey, rather than each feeling like a necessary stop on the road to something larger. There each aspect of the story in the two towers built on each other in order to add weight to the narrative. Each encounter in the desolation of Smog feels strangely isolated, no matter now where they are executed. Thank goodness for Legos and Toriel, who understand holding these separate events together. However, the desolation of Smog However, the desolation of Smog does have something going for it that gives the films a much needed boost in the last half hour or so. Smaug himself, the titular dragon who invaded the lonely mountain and made himself a bed of gold, is a wonder to behold. He is a truly stunning and remarkable creation, combining a spectacular design with the voice and performance of Benedict Cumberbatch and the best the visual effect can provide to create one of the greatest dragons ever seen on screen. Not the best, however. Smog is to discern over Golem was to an unexpected journey. A shot in the arm of the film and a boost of energy, which in many ways saves the movie. I could spend hours just watching him move through his modes of gold, without even getting to listen to Cumberbatch's confident voice, which can be both charming and terrifying. A tip of the hat needs to be go to the Martin Freeman, who is of course acting in front of a view screen, but whose recreation really helped sell what an awesome sight Smog is. As for Cumberbatch's other role as necromancer, there is also nothing to say, as there is almost nothing to do part in this film. Clearly, we have to wait out the final chapter for the payoff of that role. In the end, The Desolation of Smog is a difficult film to review. Unlike the two tower, it is such a middle chapter that it almost feels unfair to talk about it without having seen in the final. I felt like an unexpected journey did as good as a job as it could have considering the decision to split the book into these three films. But I feel like the Desolation of Smog deserves as incomplete. We know that Peter Jackson and company are capable of crafting an engaging middle chapter, but they can't interrupt their failure to do so. Here is a fault because they clearly did not set out to. Several alternate paths they could have taken seem obvious to me, but I choose none of them. As a result, the film instead feels like nothing more or less than a chunk of chapter from the more middle of a book, which may work well as the end, but for now feels like a way to fill the film. It is impossible to fault any individual thing in the production. The design, sets, costume, effect, cast, performance, music, etc. are all top notch, but the whole just feels like less than the sum of its parts. It feels like the first half than the sum of its parts. First half of a complete film with a year-long intermission, which is a different direction than The Lord of the Rings. As such, it will be impossible to have a solid perspective on the Desolation of Smog until There and Back Again is released next year. I enjoyed the Desolation of Smog show, but I wish I could have just waited and watched it back to back with the final. Excellent review. I was a tad underwhelmed by the Desolation of Smog because it felt like it was simply moving from the one action sequence to another, and it nearly felt longer than an unexpected journey. I hope it was laying the groundwork for a great final in There and Back Again. And I think you are right, then it might be better appreciated seeing them back to back. Good review. You are right, that is too much of a middle movie. There is not a single plot thread that meets any kind of resolution, and it cannot find a natural place to break the action. It is always fun visiting Middle Earth through. Dashing and Neville's Corboard, Gravity Joel Latry, Eric Standon, David Clayton, and Eric Reynolds. Although I may be among the minority, I genuinely loved the first installment of The Hobbit. Others lamented divide, long eccentrics, dinner scene at Bilbo's house. I celebrated it, others lamented the whimsy of the film and decried it because it was not the Lord of the Rings 2.0. I know it at least should not have to be done. The Hobbit is very different, literally animal, than Lodger, and an unexpected journey captured the tone of the book almost perfectly. Yeah, there were a few weird parts with regardless oversized bunnies and Azog the Defiler. But it all worked for me because the tone was about spot on. Even with some of the inclusions from the Locher, Appendix and the Silmarillion, Tolkien's work about Middle Earth. Unfortunately, the Desolation of Smog has lost nearly all of that, in addition to its main character Bilbo. Yes, among a number of smaller problems, there are two main issues in part 2 of Peter Jackson's The Hobbit films. And the first is that the film is no longer feels like The Hobbit. The story does take a decidedly more serious turn in the book, but it's also still full of bright-eyed adventure, even into the deep depth of Mirkwood forest, where half of the movie takes place. There is love somewhere in this movie. It's not immediate, but gradually I felt I was watching The Lord of the Rings all over again, albeit an inferior one that still carried many of the CGI trappings of its more fantastical prequel. There is an incongruity towards being presented visually in this movie, even down to the action, to the joyful tearing of money. Legos makes some appearances in the movie alongside a new elf, so new that she is not even a Tolkien's creation, named Toriel, and a big part of the problem. Again, I fear I must reference to the movie version of The Lord of the Rings to explain why. In later, the audience's primary stand is among the cast of characters of The Hobbit, Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin. Those four are ill equipped for the journey upon which they find themselves. So naturally, a bite of hero worship might spring as they venture forth with the finest various men, elves and dwarves have to offer. It's natural that we might see characters like Aragorn and Legolas achieving feats which could be considered superhuman. But it does not fit in The Hobbit. Even it's otherwise more of the old legend or family story than The Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit as an adventure story, a quest that's open-ended and without ostensible hurry in a way the Lord of the Rings never was. A story about a group of capable individuals working hard together to achieve something none of them could have individually, even Thorin. How many of the dwarves can you name? Does it matter? With minor exception, they function as a single unity, and as well as we are shown Bilbo as a capable and as needy as any of them. But in the Desolation of Smaug encounters, elves and a stylistic exception is blown away in favor of people shooting arrow out of the air with their arrows. Yes, this happened at least once. It's appropriately foreign, but it's also utterly encourages with the movie more whimsical visual style of The Hobbit. Legolas and Toriel don't fit in this story. Elves do. Transcendent, nearly untouchable warriors do not. I have taken a fairly lengthy digression now into this rather particular point. But when I say this does not feel like The Hobbit anymore, this is the kind of thing I am talking about. Is this and 20 other little things that depart from the tone the first movie set to capably. So that's the first big issue. Now I will address the second one. The Desolation of Smaug is lacking a main character. That's not to say Bilbo's not the character in focus more than anyone else, but he is no longer the character through whom we see the story, as he is in both an unexpected journey and the book. Thorin has a claim as the main character in this installment, and for right here, their Gandalf is certainly our protagonist. Even Gil, Toriel, and Legolas have moments where they are definitely the one whose story is presented far too often. Bilbo disappears into the tapestry of this larger Lord of the Rings sequel, tale that Jacksons and co are trying to weave, which is doubly too bad because Martin Freeman continued to give an excellent performance. It has the story, and really, it feels like part 2 has no narrative or character arc at all. I walked out of the theater after the movie and told a friend it felt like it had just marathon a TV show. Desolation of Smog in a way feels like a unified story. Its collection of events that rather than forming the emotional second act are just plot filler and only moderate interesting plot filler at that. There is also, as alluded to above, some fairly sizable chunk of movie where Gandalf had nothing to do with the Hobbit story proper. For sake of avoiding spoiler, there is not place to go into exactly how and or why certain parts of the plot fell so flat, but suffice it for no say that they do, and the audience losing sight of what Bilbo thinks about everything that's going is on a big reason why. I have made it 900 words, now without so much of a mention of the dragon from whom the lead title is taken, so I guess I should take a moment before I wrap this up to the address him. Benedict Cumberbatch, very heavily assisted, voice proves a great for it was smug, and also the character ends up being shown way too much. And also the character ends up being shown way too much. Whoever did the design on him did a great job. I wish he would have been or just a little more. It would have had excellent apparent staticness in the third text as well. But in terms of the questions, it is a dragon cool. Yeah, he's cool, he's just not a show stealer. About an hour into The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, I found myself thinking, as a Tolkien fan, this is a lot of fun, but when does work as a standable movie, even when in series, the volume of knowledge expected of the audience to get everything one might out of Desolation of Smaug is staggering. I would smug the scars. There is no avoiding the ongoing discussion about the impending release of Peter Jackson's The Hobbit and Unexpected Journey next Friday. Current hot topics include the mixed yet overall positive yearly reviews, controversy over the film's high frame rate 3D, and background information on the J.R.R. Tolkien's adaptations. For those still getting up to speed on the Middle Earth madness, we have even started to look ahead to the second and third installment in Jackson's new Tolkien trilogy. Last night, the first image from Part 3 subtitled There and Back Again was unveiled, testing the return of Lord of the Rings alum Orlando Bloom as Legolas. And today, we have a sneak peek at Part 2, The Desolation of Smaug. The Desolation of Smaug referred to the unpopulated lands around Erebor and the city out there, which were left scorched earth utterly void of life after the dragon Smaug attacked and claimed Erebor as his own, including massive piles of treasure amassed by the dwarves. Benedict Cumberbatch's Star Trek is voicing and portraying via motion capture The scaly fire breather. Home humble Hobbit Bilbo Baggins Martin Freeman encounters on his own in the depth of Smaug's gold-filled lair. Who else out there is amused by the thought of Freeman's conversing with a giant CG monster version of Cumberbatch, who Bilbo is presumably facing, off screen in the screenshot above. Seeing how did you play the inseparable John Watson and Sherlock Holmes on the BB's hit series Sherlock. Suffice it to say, the endless internet fancified memes and parodies are immutable moving on. Hugo Weaving, who reprising his role as immortal Allot from Lord of the Rings, previously indicated that the climatic battle of five armies from Tolkien's source material is going to be the major event that propels the story forward in there and back again. After Dragon's problem is mostly fully resolved in the Desolation of Smaug, that is, Hobbit co-writer producers Philippa Boyens confirmed as much to Eve when she said, "The dragon is a huge, wonderful, amazing part of the story, but it does not end there. Everyone can suspect there is rather a large battle in film there. That creative decision makes sense from a storytelling perspective as the conflict with Smaug and battle of five armies are each arguably sufficiently massive events to sustain single films. Moreover, subsequent Hobbit installment should build up the momentum. The most people say an unexpected journey gains in the second and third act, and as Mark and improvements on the first chapter in Jackson's new Middle Earth yarn. The Hobbit Unexpected Journey hits theatre on December 14. The Hobbit The Desolations of Smaug hit theatres December 13. Lastly, The Hobbit Here and Back Again hits theatre July 2014. However, the actors went on to promise that Toriel won't simply be another effeminate, yet stoic and barely emotions, elfish bowman, the female equivalent to Orlando Bloom as Legolas in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. She will definitely have a love story. I can't give away too much about it. It's not a huge focus, but it is there and it is important and it does drive Toriel and her story and her action. For more about sad love subplot and Lily feelings about the fact that some J.R.R. Tolkien's persist or won't approve of the her characters, read the full interview or at Boyens addressed the screenwriter decision to create the Toriel character during the 2012 Comic Con panel for The Hobbit, saying that it was partly motivated by a desire to make the Tolkien story less of a boys only adventure. Similarly, Boyens and her fellow writers proved able to increase the feminine presence in the first installment by just a smidge, with the inclusion of the White Council meeting a Rivendell, where the goddess of Middle-earth, Galadriel Cute Blanchard, was in attendance. Point being, the sequence fit organically enough into the narrative flow of an unexpected journey, and it sounds like the approach Victorial, taking one of the nameless Mirkwood elves in Tolkien's source novel and giving her in an identity should feel just as natural. All things considered, now into the dragon's hair. The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug opened in theatre on December 13. Special effects that have always played an important role in Peter Jackson's adaptations of J.R.R. Tolkien's book out. With The Desolation of Smaug, the middle chapter of the Hobbit movie trilogy, they take center stage. This is not necessarily a positive development because it comes at the expense of things many films yours value like characters development and narrative trust, filmed and exhibited primarily in 3D, with lengthy computer-created action sequence. The resolution of Smaug often looks and feels more like a video game than a motion picture. There are things like about the second Hobbit film. The director's vision of Middle-earth is a beginning as ever, but the plotting that was a problem with an unexpected journey is an even bigger issue here. The resolution of Smaug is too long and too visually busy to be loved by an but a die-hard fan. Versus those who try Tolkien's return, what biblical references may be horrified. A lot of running around it consumed. The running term bears no resemblance to anything in the book. Although Jackson does not change the core story, he treats like outline. Less than 50% of what on screen during the course of the Desolation of Smaug comes from the Hobbit. The rest is quote from Tolkien's notes and Jackson's imagination. The film picks up where predecessor left off, with Hobbit Bilbo begins. Martin Freeman, Wizard Gandalf, Lan McKellen, and our three dwarves led by Thorin, continuing their great adventure. After the confrontation with Azog, the Defiler, that ended an unexpected journey, the group encountered a shape-shifting giant of man named Bjorn. They spent the night in his house before entering Mirkwood forest whole giant spider and unhelpful elves await. After negotiations between Thorin and the Elf King, with Orc in pursuit, they continued their journey to the Lonely Mountain, where Smaug the Dragon's voice of Benedict Cumberbatch awaits. Meanwhile, Gandalf, having separated from the main part, pays a visit to Dol Guldur, the castle of the necromancer, and learns that Sauron has returned to Middle-earth and is preparing for war. One evident improvement over an unexpected journey relates to pacing. This movie does not bog down the way the previous one did. It shifts from one action sequence to the next, sometimes without taking time to breathe. Unfortunately, Jackson's overlasses on computer-generated imagery during many of these high-once sequences diminishes the experience. Action works best when there is an identification with the characters and real sense of danger. Those elements are absent here. Many of the Desolation of Smaug high-profile sequences feel either like Alberta video game cutscenes or template for an amusement ride. An example is the barrel escape. High feels like a hyper real animated sequence. By spending so much time extending action sequences, there is often the ball of the lonely mountain that lasts up to 30 minutes. Jackson is forced to end the film on a cliffhanger. It's an awkward stopping point that may anger some viewer. Admittedly, the dragon looks great, quite an achievement, especially when seen in the full glory on the big screen. Benedict Cumberbatch provides Smaug voice, giving him an opportunity to interact with Sherlock to star Martin Freeman with appropriate gravitas. Still, what was a high point becomes distant for no purpose other than to highlight the technical proficiency of special effects wizard. The movie's look is dead. Color is so desaturated during the second half that there are times when the desolation of smog appear monochromatic and Howard shadows normally. Praiseworthy score is disappointingly flat. Fans of the Lord of the Rings will have welcomed the return of Legolas, although he is not mentioned by name in Tolkien's book. This is an example of effective artistic lessons. The same can be said of inclusion of Torium. Creation of screenwriter Flan Walsh, Philippa Bowens, and Peter Jackson's tutorial at least gives a desolation of Smaug female presence and her character arc. Limited it may be, is undergoing the best new addition to the desolation of Smaug is part to take Dawn, hero, whose story has been expanded beyond the one provided by Tolkien. Part 2 of Peter Jackson's Middle-earth prequel trilogy. The Hobbit: The Desolations of Smaug picks up right after the events of an unexpected journey. Read our review as Bilbo Baggins, Martin Freeman, Gandalf the Grey, Alan McKellen, Thorin Oakenshield, Richard Armitage, and his company of dwarves continue their journey to the Lonely Mountain, pursued by a horde of orcs commanded by the ruthless Azog. Bilbo and his friends have no choice but to brave the dangers of Mirkwood a dense and dangerous forest where even the most valiant and skilled warrior can become lost to darkness. Bilbo and his friends know a choice but to brave the danger of Mirkwood, a dense and dangerous forest where even the most valiant and skilled warriors can become lost to darkness. However, just as the company is about to enter Twist Tree Line, Gandalf is called away on an important mission of his own to investigate the growing necromancer threat at Dol Guldur, leaving the Hobbit and dwarves to continue on without assistance from the wizard. Underrated Thorin leads his companions onto the forest trail, refocusing on the mission at hand, reached in Lonely Mountain, and recovered the Arkenstone from Smaug, the cunning and deadly dragon that drove the dwarves from their home and fortune in Erebor 150 years ago. When it was first announced that Jackson's intending to make not just two, but three full-length films out of The Hobbit, a roughly 300-page book, fans were quick to disarray the new trilogy as bloated cash grab. Adding fuel to the argument, the first entry in the series was largely considered to be long, with only a few memorable moments capable of living up to the eye-popping spectacle depicted in the Lord of the Rings movies. Fortunately, the Desolation of Smaug proves that any shortcoming in the first chapter were worth the trouble, as both the Hobbit storyline and larger pre-Lord of the Rings plot are smartly woven together in service of a more exciting and emotional viewing experience. Still, considering that each of Jackson's Middle-earth movies have presented a solid balance of comedy, action characters and heart, the Desolations of Smaug is not an overwhelming setup for the already strong franchise, but it does contain some especially impressive elements, most notably the titular dragon. As in the prior entry, Jackson takes a lot of story liberties in his follow-up, some of which will likely irritate die-hard fans of the book series, especially moments when reimagining significant moments in the third act. Yet even interviewing narrative will make it easier to engage a diverse range of audience members. The Desolations of Smaug, much like an unexpected journey, is a lengthy term investment with a 161 minutes runtime, one that could have easily been trimmed at the point given that we have only seen two-thirds of a planned trilogy. It's unclear whether many of Jackson's more divisive tangents and added material will be worth the effort as well as screen time by the conclusion of Tree and Back Again. But moment to moment, the filmmaker successfully presents significantly more rounded portraits of important Hobbit elements, especially in the case of key supporting Smaug player. The expensive approach to the source material story serves Jackson's cinematic medium and the current movie. Even if the written text is much smaller and more straightforward, since the director delivers enthralling and humorous action set pieces, enjoyable implementation of fan-favorite Middle-earth characters, as well as intriguing connection to the larger Lord of the Rings storyline. Freeman, McKellen, and Archie just as good in the follow-up as they were in the first, and a few of the dwarves are also given a more prominent role this round, most notably Kelly and Blaine Scott, who are instrumental in selling a pair of especially character-focused moments that exemplify Jackson's effort in presenting his supporting cast as more than just sidekicks to the main heroes. There are also plenty of new cast members in Part 2, with Luke Evans presenting a charming take on Barty Bowman, who will be fleshed out even further in the final installment. Jackson also makes smart use of Legos Bloom exploring the Fellowship of the Ring members' backstory as the son of the Evan King. Thranduil Lepus, while the character did not directly factor into the Hobbit book, his inclusion in the Desolations of Smaug is a major highlight, as Bloom portrays a slightly naive variation of the iconic hero, as well as enjoys several over the top but every exciting action scene. Similarly, Chief of the Guards for the 11 King, Choriel Evangeline Lilly, a character that was invented early by Jackson, and screenwriter Fran Vlash is an immediate standout. The elf not to mention actress sees several stands away from established players, including Legos, and is without question one of the most successful of Jackson's addition to the Hobbit narrative. That said, will be interesting to see how the filmmaker handles tutorial in the third chapter, since her dynamic within a semi-smitten the ghost borders on melodrama at time and could weaken Bloom's beloved characters in the long run. Smaug was teased at the end of an unexpected journey, and thankfully the final on-screen version is worth the wait. The combined effect of Veta Digital and actor Benedict Cumberbatch, whose voiced Smaug, as well as provided motion capture for the dragon's facial animation, result in one of the most believable fantasy creatures ever put to film. The sheer scale and detail of the dragon, set against the labyrinth of gold coins, jewels, and other dwarf treasure, is a treat for the eyes, one that is made even better by Cumberbatch's snarky and coy voice acting. Anyone who might have been concerned that the Smart Bilbo meeting would be closed over in favor of blockbuster action set pieces will be relieved to hear that Jackson's dedicate a decent amount of time to their interplay, which might even for some rival Gollum's riders in the dark sequence as one of the best scenes is the Hobbit film trilogy. The Hobbit, the Desolation of Smaug in once again playing as both 3D and 3D HFR, high frame rate, premium presentation is in general the 3D in short for depth, not pop out, gimmicks, and aside from a distracting sequence with a honey bee flying at the screen, most of the third dimension effect is used for subtle immersion. Several 3D shots of Smaug help sell the scope of the beast and are worth the added up charge alone. But viewers who are expecting in your face 3D moments might still be underwhelmed with their final return on investment. As for HFR, the same plus and minus apply again. So make sure to read our article on the Hobbit's use of 48 FPC 3D to help make an informed decision before seeking out an HFR editor. J.R.R. Tolkien's purist will likely have more than a few qualms with Jackson's second chapter in the Hobbit film series. However, as a movie experience, the director has once again delivered a humorous and enthralling read, downright entertaining adventure in Middle-earth with rich character. There and Big again opens in theaters on December 17, 24, but in the meantime, it's encouraging to see Jackson is committed to presenting an impactful version of the Hobbit book for the movie's viewing medium, even if it means the director has to stand by a few especially controversial changes. If you are still on the fence about the Hobbit that are solutions of Smaug, check out the trailer below. The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug runs 161 minutes and is rated PG-13 for extended sequences for intense fantasy action, violence, and frightening images. Now playing in 2D, 3D, and 3D HFR theater. Let us know what you thought of the film in the comment section below. If you have seen the movie and want to seek us tell about the film without worrying about spoiling it for those who haven't seen it, please head over to our Desolation of Smaug spoiler discussion for an in-depth discussion of the film by the Screen Rant editor. Check out our The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug episode of the SR Underground podcast. Follow me on. Just as last month on this website when talking about The Hunger Games Catching Fire, The values and success of great movie trilogies came up in conversation. In that view, I referenced the long measuring dimension I formulated about movie trilogies when I reviewed The Dark Knight Rises in 2012. To summarize my finding from both of those reviews, I believe the best trilogies are revered and remembered for either an amazing cliffhanging middle chapter that bleeds from a strong origin or a dynamite final chapter that saves the best for last and releases all of the energetic build-up the filmmakers were saving the whole time. For create like The Godfather, Star Wars, and the Dark Knight series, the middle film was their best, while Toy Story, the Jason's Bourne film, and the Lord of the Rings saga awaited until the final film to dazzle the most. In giving the Hunger Games Catching Fire a middle of the road 3-star review, I aligned myself as patiently waiting for the conclusion of his intended trilogy before passing final judgment while still holding onto the hunch that they were saving their best for the end. With the arrival of the Hobbit, the Desolation of Smaug, the thrilling middle chapter of Peter Jackson's newest trilogy, the blueprint for this trilogy's success seems to be aligned with Jackson's first trip to Middle-earth over a decade ago. Like the Lord of the Rings series, I think the best is getting set for last. A year ago, when I reviewed The Hobbit and Journey, I talked extensively about having the virtue of patience to see a whole story through. I staunchly defended the right Peter Jackson and company had to methodically build their story and their world on their own time and to their desired detail. After already banking one great movie trilogy, I felt Jackson's had earned that luxury. A year later, with the second and middle chapter hitting theatre, my opinion has not changed. I gave The Hobbit an unexpected journey a 5-star review and a place on my ear and 10 best list of 2012, and I echoed the scholar for The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, like a great middle chapter should. This film escalated the tension, danger and risk toward as yet unseen climax that is sure to blow our socks off, or the producers still making us for 3 movies that could have fit into one. Probably, but once again, I for me, one, have the patience to respect what these filmmakers are up to and value what others might call tedious. To bring you up to speed from the first chapter, the wizard Gandalf, the Grey Lan McKellen, has enlisted the sensible Huffing Hobbit Bilbo Baggins Martin Freeman to play a small but crucial bugler role in the quest of a company of displaced dwarves led by Thorin Oakenshield, Richard Armitage, heir to the throne. The 13 of the seek to reclaim his bride and their lost homeland, the lonely mountain of Ivor, which was invented by a giant gold-lusting dragon named Smaug a generation ago. The request has put them in the crosshairs of an orc legion being controlled by a mysterious necromancer figure that can raise the dead, but not before Fred and Bilbo to an encounter with Gollum, where he required a certain precious piece of jewelry that will change his life. In this film, the journey to Erebor supplied the party. Gandalf leaves the group to confront the dark necromancer threat to the south in the abandoned ruins of Dol Guldur. The rest of them dog the orc hunter by going through the decaying Mirkwood forest regions controlled by the Wood-elves. After tangling with deadly spider, the company is taken captive by Legos, the familiar face of Orento, and his orca captain, Thranduil, Evangeline Lily out to be lost and brought before the Eleven King. Thranduil legions leap base Thorin refused their assistance, and Bilbo, using his ring-powered stealth, enabled their daring rival escape out of Mirkwood. After clearing the forest, the dwarves acquired the benevolent help of Bard, Bowman, Fast and Furious of Six Luke Evans, and influential would-be leader of Lake Tron at the foot of the lonely mountain. With the orcs and now the elves on their tail, the dwarves and Bilbo reload and regroup in Lake Tron before making their final ascension to the slope and secret passage inside Irbor. The prevailing mystery is just how formidable is that free-breathing threat that awaits them there. I love the marketing of The Hobbit, the Desolation of Smaug, and also the entire film were true to J.R.R. Tolkien. Master planned to wisely hide the big-ticket item from full view outside, a passing glimpse or two. You know Samsung was coming. You know Mr. 2013 Benedict was going to play and voice him. You know it was going to be good, and not a drop of the anticipation was wasted once Big Boy emerged from the gold and shows up on screen in all of his winged British ascended glory. Your jaw drops right there with Bilbo's. The build up and your $8 were worth it, and clash with Smaug appear to be just the beginning of the potential enormity of what lies ahead. The continued characters' development is another part of the passions of The Hobbit. The Desolation of Smaug. A few of our sporting drawers are starting to get a title more way to lift out to join the leads of Bilbo, Thorin and Gandalf, the new additions of Legos, Tauriel, and Bard if right in hand expand the rooting interest for our hero. Martin Freeman's performance as Bilbo Baggins is still the brightest gem of the bunch. He brings a welcome intelligence, wit, and humanity to this band of dwarves. Just as with the first film, every technical aspect of the film is off the charts. This is big, cinematic spectacle and adventure at its finest. The visual rub from collaborator Goldell and the originally selected director before Peter Jackson's reassumed Daliet is ever-present in creature and productions design. The special effects, costume design, makeup, and stunt work are in the top from the action scene are stupendously exciting at them. The composer Howard Shore's musical theme keep getting better. None of this should surprise us from a Peter Jackson's productions. Put your keen eye on and you might just catch the Peter Jackson and Stephen Colbert gowns that are hidden in his chapter. As I have done me since The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, I will move forward defending this film, trilogy merits and preach the patience to see this story through to the end. I have seen nothing but promise and entertainment and hope you do the same. I still think this vast trilogy will smash seamlessly with a lot of the rings and create a gang double trilogy epic tale. In my review of the first film, I called upon audiences to visualize how a movie would feel if they felt a full story after the first act. I asked you to imagine if you stopped watching Psycho when Martian Cannon left Phoenix. With the release of The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, coming December 13, we thought a good way of reacquainting you with some of the characters and introducing you to some new ones would be through visual identification. A quick recap of where we left off as you re-enter Middle-earth. The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug is set some of 60 years before The Lord of the Rings. Directed Peter Jackson split the narrative of The Hobbit into 3 films when we last left Bilbo Baggins Martin Freeman at the end of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. He Gandalf and J. Brand of 13 dwarves, led by Thorin Oakenshield, were on their way to attempt to reclaim the lonely mountain from the titular dragon Smaug. present Benedict. They have just survived a battle with the lunatic orc war chief Azog, thanks to being rescued by the aforementioned giant eagle, and are trekking to Karok, a huge rock outcropping there. In the distance, they can see the final destination of their quest, the Lonely Mountain. This is where the lost dwarf kingdom of Erebor was located before Smaug decimmated the kingdom and took the mountain and its riches for his own. So let's take a look at some of these characters in an attempt to better understand just exactly who they are or what's going on in Middle Earth. We will start with the obvious character and work our way into some of the newer faces we will be seeing. Lam and McKellen is legendary actor and has done a thousands incredible things on the stage and screen. Yet he has to so wholly inhabited the role of Gandalf, it's near impossible to think of any other actor playing the mysterious wizard, and he will probably be remembered first and foremost of this role. Gandalf is perhaps the most essential character in the entire Hobbit Rings universe who's not Bilbo or Frodo. Without Gandalf, the company looking to destroy the ring in the later trilogy would not have made it on several occasions, and the same could be said again for Gandalf, Ronan Bilbo, and his band of dwarves quest. It was Gandalf who killed the great goblin in the previous Hobbit, allowing the company to escape, and he will back again, gilding Bilbo and crew to the Lonely Mountain and the ultimate faces of the Smaug. What was Gandalf's logic in incorporating Bilbo Baggins, a peaceable, pipe-smoking hobbit, into this entire ordeal in the first place? Gandalf and the dwarves' mission is save the whole having to fight a gigantic dragon's part, essentially a haste. They want to reclaim a Lonely Mountain from Smaug and will need to be stealthy in order to do it. Thanks to Bilbo, diminutive size, and the hobbit race's ability to move about on their large padded feet quality, Gandalf felt Bilbo would be the perfect burglar, able to have the company sneak about amongst hostile lands. Gandalf undoubtedly saw more in Bilbo than just stealth. The Hobbit ends up showcasing quite a bit of coverage throughout his ordeal. In many ways, the Hobbit trilogy that Jackson is crafting is driven as much by Thorin Oakenshield gloomy desperation to reclaim his lost kingdom, as it by Bilbo or Gandalf. He is in the undisputed leader of the 12 dwarves in his company, and various his band can be righteous and fun-loving. Oakenshield got the personality of his last name. His desire to destroy Smaug and reclaim Erebor is almost as single-minded as Gollum's need for his precious. Thorin has both trust and insecurity issues. His need to avenge his family and his people. Destruction has led to him feel he can count on few of his allies, and Gandalf's leadership challenges of his own. And as for the elves, whom Thorin remembers seeing as a boy watching his kingdom burn, he could still his sword in the chip on his shoulder. Dwalin and Balin are brother, the brawn and brains in Thorin's operation. Dwalin is recognizable as the tallest of the dwarves and is probably Thorin's fiercest ally on battlefield. Like Thorin, he is distrustful of anyone who has not earned his respect, especially elves, and was involved in the famous battle with the Orc War Chief Azog, who figures prominently in both of these Hobbit films. Balin acts as an advisor to Thorin as the oldest member of the company. Save Gandalf, he is counted for his wisdom. Unlike most of the warlike dwarves, Balin's gentle and has done battle in his life due to circumstances rather than zeal. Balin, like Bilbo, during the first Hobbit outset, harbors deep concerns about their quest. Good old grunting, grumbling before carries around the ultimate battle. It has been 2 years since Bilbo said, I am going on an adventure, as he gleefully bounded out of the Shire, following after Gandalf and quite a merry gathering. Our dwarves, and here we come to end our Bilbo story, our Thorin's, our Thranduil, but the beginning of the tale of the Lord of the Rings, like a lot of people. I was skeptical at the money grab of developing one-starred children's book into the film, and having sat through the saga, I still believe two would have been enough, but that might have robbed us of some the magnificent of the third installment. So maybe I should eat my words. The Battle of the Five Armies is, I think, the best of the Hobbit film. It has everything that made the first two entertaining: action scenes, humor, and memorable characters, but adds back in the heart and characters development missing from last year's installment. Some of my usual complaints remain intact. Namely, I don't think Peter Jackson's know when a film is long enough and his battle scene and one fight reflect his. But all in all, I loved it. Opening with the burning of Lake Town was a nice idea. It sets the stage up for immediate action. It exists the major villain of the former film is a dramatic fashion, and it paves the way for all the angst-ridden character stories that follow. It sees the rise of Bard as an unlikely leader. It brings the arrival of Thranduil and all that entail, including family strife, and it shows us early signs of Thorin's descent into insanity. He stands not watching Lake John burn, but staring at the mountain, at the great door, thinking of the treasures contained within. His heart is not with the screaming people of the town raping the disaster of his arrogance is challenging Smaug, but with the missing orc stone. Thorin's journey has been at the heart of the saga from the beginning, and his is the only film that truly brings that into focus, because it pivots on changing him. In his descent, his redemptions, and then, finally, tragically, his death. Truly, from me, the most heartbreaking moment in the film was him laying Bilbo's arm, taking his last breath, as a tearful hobbit assures him that the eagle are here. It's all right, Thorin, the battle is won, but it's too late. He died Harry but he's still dead. The wages of sin is still dead. Like Bromir, he turned from the darkness at the end. It's nice reversal from that other sin. For this time of a beat who cradles a king, while so subtle that it might get lost at time in the overwhelming drama of five drum armies converging upon the one's place. The plot arc surrounding Thranduil also tutored on my heartstrings, the cowardly, disdainful, even dislikable 11 Kings hardened exterior cracks to show us a glimpse of his true soul, of the immense fear of loss and the hatred of death, and that impacts many of his decisions. His break with Legos is truly that undoes his pride. You can see it in his face. The intense injury done to him. I thought that Legos will abandon him because of his behavior. Their reconciliation is a model of Eleven's restraint, of things not said, but generally understood, that bleeds into Thranduil's conversation with Tauriel as she holds her fallen dwarf love in her arm and cries for his loss. Why does it hurt too much? She asks the Eleven King and begs him to take her feelings from her. He refuses an answer because it was real. The line speaks into profound truth. If there is no pain in loss, the loss itself was never genuine. We must feel loss to know love. And in that moment, we see Thranduil's true heart. He forgives and he understands only when he sees Tauriel experiencing in emotion he knows all too well. The loss of his wife, the immense young grief he has lived with ever since. That to me is more tragically romantic than any star-crossed elf-dwarf romance on screen. In a handful of lines, in the beginning look, it's told you a love story, even more impacting than what unfolded on screen. But without Toriel and Kelly, we would never have seen it. It is these intense but repressed emotions that draw me, so the elves that make me enjoy having them on screen. Even if it is brief, the scene with Elrond and Galadriel was short too, but awesome. It ended too abruptly, with dangling threads that I half suspect there is more to come in extended edition. But it was fun to see Elrond deliver one of the best lines. You should have said that, and leap indeed to defend Galadriel, who then turns on the full force of Narnia against the darkness, morphs into a great and terrible queen, and banishes Sauron into murder. Given her full-on god transformations, all I can say is no wonder the dwarves think her a great elf witch. I love the scenes preceding it, but I am not sure how I feel about his interpretation of her. It seems dark to dark. She looks evil, she is not, and I must wonder why. It is the power of Narnia against the Dark Lord that transforms her appearance, or it is that she is reflecting evil while fighting it off. It puzzles me, and is the only element I am uncertain of. But I thought the confrontation was done well. I hope there is more of it to come. In terms of cinematic enjoyment, I think this may be my favorite of all six films. I like the characterization and the emotions depth of it. If ever there was a film that would fall victim to the infamous Tomb Raider trap, it is this one. The Hobbit, an unexpected journey, disappointed a large number of hardcore fans but still ended up with a $1 billion worldwide. So while the Dissolutions of Smaug is somewhat better in number of key areas, more action, better special effect etc., will the casual fans who felt harmed by the first outing show of this triumph around in as great a number, even if the Hobbit is still better than the Hobbit one. We are still looking at situations not unlike Star Wars episode Attack of the Clones, a very more action-packed and crowd-pleasing sequel, made less than the allegedly involved original. Now, of course, the entire Hobbit trilogy basically paid for itself via the last film. So whatever money they lost to make it all but icing on a very lucrative cake. For the record, when I talk about lower grosses the second time around, I am not talking about anything resembling a flop or even a financial disappointment. Even if the Hobbit Part 2 of 3 ends up taking a substantial dive, it's still probably looking at off the top of my head and not official predictions $240 billion domestic and $750 million worldwide. We are still talking massive number. The Peter Jackson sequel prequel is still going to benefit from these legendary December legs. A lack of mega fantasy competition over Christmas weekend is mostly Oscar bait and adult genre fare, as well as a relatively weak January slate. Jack Ryan Shadow Recorded is the only big movie opening wide next month outside of the expansions of Mark Wahlberg Lone Survivor. All of this is a way of saying that I don't feel entirely comfortable making any kind of box office prediction at this point. All of this is a way of saying that I don't feel entirely comfortable making any kind of box office prediction at this point. Not even regarding opening weekend. Of the record, it's just over under the $83 million that the last Hobbit debuted with. But again with number this large and first film paying for most of the cost associated with the entire trilogy. This is more about pride than a return on investment. The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug is technically better, than The Hobbit, an unexpected journey. In the same way, Attack of the Clones was technically better than the Palladium Menace. This second film is not superior, so much as it gives the fans what they claim they want. In the case, it cuts right to the chase and he's quite a bit more action than the last installment. It has a return appearance by a fan favorite as well as completely invented as kicking female characters. It ends its first act with a genuine all-time classic action beat and his some solid character work when the title character finally shows up in the third act, but is still painfully weak in the areas of writing and plotting. It lacks any real characters development for its leads and still lack any sense of danger or emotions battles. It's better while still not qualifying as good. The film is still like the installment of plotting journey with little character development and no urgency. It is still not a patch on the original Lord of the Rings series and remains a sad example of how you sometimes can't go home again, like the prequel installment. The film constantly sets out to disparately attempt to convince us that its journey of a handful of dwarfs to steal gold back from a dragon is every bit as important as the quest to toss a world killing ring into a volcano. The film is filled with random characters explaining explicit detail and about how the world is immediate peril from some arbitrary reason and how treacherous that journey will be for our would-be heroes. Ironically, Daniel any real characters overcomes from the above mentioned new characters.